Hi, welcome to Beyond the Paper Gown. I'm your host, Dr. Mitzi Krockover. As you may know, we focus on women's health issues, the factors that impact our health, and the innovations and innovators who are helping to improve it. We have such an innovator and creative thinker and doer today who noticed that there wasn't a lot of information or innovation for women experiencing the symptoms of perimenopause and aging. So she found out what women want, developed wellness programs focused on menopause, and created a roadmap for innovators to help them meet the needs of this population. Oh, and she also started a company selling tea aimed at reducing the symptoms of perimenopause, such as brain fog and hot flashes. Denise Pines is not only a trailblazer in women's health, her multifaceted career spans from leadership roles on medical boards that oversee the practice of healthcare providers and the admissions committee of a medical school, to producing award-winning and impactful documentaries, as well as television and radio shows. Today, we'll hear about Denise's projects and learn from her wealth of knowledge and experience. We have a very special guest today who wears many hats and has really been a force in women's health in a variety of ways. In addition to all the roles I mentioned in the introduction, you're also a wellness advocate, correct?
Yes, I'm absolutely. Yeah, I call myself an age enthusiast. And yeah, I advocate mostly for women's health. And I have a particular keen interest in women of color, obviously, because I'm a woman of color. And just the, sort of the disparities that we find in women, just in women's health, period. But then when it extends to women of color, we see some more dire outcomes. So I try to make sure I'm always inclusive of those women in the work that I do.
I mentioned that you founded WisePause Wellness,
Yes.
Botanics, and the FemAging Project,
Yeah.
all which again are very much around menopause. So give us a little taste of each one of those, and then I want to drill down on each one as well.
Sure. I sort of feel like, like all of this has just been kind of how my life has evolved. It's interesting. When I was young, I was in the fashion business. I worked for really luxury brands like Louis Vuitton and Neiman Marcus. And then I felt like in fashion that I didn't feel like the work that I was doing was really purposeful. So I decided I needed a new place to live. And at the time I was in San Francisco, where I grew up. And I moved to Los Angeles. And literally the next day, it was the Rodney King riots. And my interest shifted into social justice and advocacy work and how to use media, events, and publishing to change and lift up African Americans and Latino voices. So over the years, I've worked with the top 25 foundations in the world, the top 50 corporations that I've partnered with. And I've always had sort of this interest in health and wellness. Initially my own health and wellness because I was an asthmatic child. And then eventually I realized that my asthma had reached a point where I could actually start moving my body. And that was around when I was about between 18 and 19. And so that really created more of an interest in health when I realized that my health had transformed. Now, I still have asthma, but it's very controlled. I'm never without my inhaler, that type of thing. But, I realized that we can stretch the boundaries of our health. So in entertainment, I've produced over 1,000 hours of media content and wellness, and worked on wellness events. And then poof, I get a hot flash in all of this. In all of this, right? And so that changed that hormonal, impact sort of changed my journey. And it made me start advocating for women at this life stage. Because one of the things I noticed that I hadn't noticed before in media is that we just didn't see, women's voices definitely talking in this particular space. And I knew that, I could do it because I had the influence and power to be able to do it. And so I just decided I was going to bring all of my experience, my media experience, my event experience, and even I had a publishing company at one time. And then with a person I work with, we had a huge publishing division. And so, that led me to the hot flashes led me to creating or co-creating tea Botanics and hot flash tea. And that led me to talking to so many women around the country and realizing that women were, I was hearing three consistent themes: that they were confused by the language, right? Perimenopause, bioidenticals, hormone replacement therapy. So they were confused by the language. They felt that they were alone, like they were the only ones that were experiencing this, and that they didn't really know where. They felt like they also weren't prepared. That even for myself, as involved as I am in health, why did I believe in my mind I was not going to have a hot flash? Why was I not prepared for the moment when it did happen? So we're in the healthcare journey for women in particular. Have we let them down? And so that's when I decided I was going to create WisePause and bring the experts to these women in a place where they felt safe. And then one day I'm reading articles around femtech, and everything was around fertility and pregnancy and periods. And there was very little about or technology around, aging women's health, anything for women who were over 40. And so I decided that I was going to coin this word called FemAging. And it was going to mean this sort of particular focus on women 40 plus around creating innovation specifically designed for them. And I thought to really do that was to release a report, right? So I worked with a third-party research firm, and we released our first report called FemAging. At the time, it was 2020 Health Tech Report. And so it was 2020, so it came out during the pandemic. So it was really tough. We ended up having to do a FemAging COVID report to be able to get some traction, sort of during that time. And I did that to really create a roadmap for innovators to innovate correctly for women, for investors to know what is viable in the marketplace, and then for clinicians to work more with innovators, right? And so I also do menopause in the workplace training. I do it for, sort of the state of California, and I do it for a lot of the major entertainment companies. And next year, I'm hoping to work with medical schools to improve women's health curriculum. I'm going to start with the school that I'm a part of, but we've really got to change like how we talk about women's health, and specifically these years leading up to and including menopause.
Nobody can see me, but I am nodding my head like, a bobblehead right now, because that for me is one of the key areas. We talk about innovation, we talk about investment, we talk about research, but what hasn't happened in the way that we both obviously think is that clinicians in training aren't getting the information, and they're having to get it piecemeal outside with CMEs, and it's very sporadic and fragmented, I would say. So,
exactly. So what's scary about that, right, is that current practicing physicians that women go to, including some OBGYNs, but definitely their general practitioners, which most people go to, there's a knowledge gap there. But then here we are, we're training the next doctors to take over for those doctors, and they have a knowledge gap,
So
right?
true.
It's mind-boggling. That's one of those things where I just go like, huh?
No, it's interesting. When I was at the Women's Health Center at UCLA, I was asked to give grand rounds at another medical school. And again, I guess when you're in the midst of it, you think everybody, understands it. And I had students come up to me and go, "We've never heard this before." I do think that with the increasing amount of women, I think with the increasing amount of focus, but as you know, physicians and medical schools are kind of the last ones, late adopters, let's put it that way. But hopefully there's enough impetus right now. So let's talk a little bit about the roadmap and the report, because you said you started this in 2020, and I just saw the 2023 report. So talk a little bit about as the kinds of things that you're doing and the innovators that we're seeing out there, and even the practitioners that are involved. Have we made an impact? What have you seen, or some things still the same?
We are, sort of like I said, women's health is beyond fertility, right? When I started this, that's what I would always say. Because when we think of women's health, which is one of the reasons why we see menopause in, solutions in such a deficit, and conversations in the healthcare industry in such a gap stage, is that we've only focused on women in these sort of fertility years, right? And so when it comes to post-childbearing years, innovation and research and even clinical practice has really suffered as a result of that over-focus of that time frame on women. And it just sort of follows with society, right? Like, we don't care in general about older people. And so we just really wanted to look at FemAging tech as, innovations that were software, innovations that were diagnostic, that were devices, that were nutraceuticals. So looking a little differently, wearables, and of course the pharmaceuticals, and then clothing, because of the hot flashes or the night sweats. There's, interesting solutions that people have come up with around clothing for these women. So where we're seeing the biggest strides is in vaginal health, right? In vaginal health, we're starting to see delivery of products more efficiently in the vaginal area. We're seeing improved solutions for women who have incontinence, improved solutions for women who have dryness. We're starting to see more of that growth. And then on the other side, from the digital side, in telehealth, we're seeing companies that are coming on board who are trying to find physician specialists focused on women's health 40 plus, so that women, there is a place women can go to.
Because of COVID, I think there's been a real turn to obviously telehealth, but also along with that, a focus on convenience. So being able to diagnose your own UTI, or getting, over-the-counter vaginal creams for yeast infections, or just, again, having anything from Amazon delivered by tomorrow. My sense is that has really propelled a lot of women into, being more willing and able to look for their own solutions.
Yes. In our recent report, the 2023 report, one of the insights that came from that report was that women of color, when they show up to the doctor tends not to listen to them. And so when they show up saying, I'm having this, I'm experiencing that, the doctors sort of poo-poo them away. And so what we found was that those women, Black women, Latino women, look for at-home tests, at-home hormone tests, at-home UTI tests, so then they can come back to the doctors and say, like, look, this is what this is saying. Can we talk about that? Can we, begin from what these results are, right?
Sure.
They feel that is sort of a partner for them, right, in their healthcare.
Sure.
So yes, those kinds of, I think that's going to grow. I think personalization of healthcare is really going to explode. AI now, AI has been around for a long time. People act like it's something new, but personalization of health, your health care needs are different from my health care needs. I want health care needs that are for me. You want health care needs that are for you. So that's where I think health is moving. And those people who are able to sort of connect that innovation around personalization is, I think, going to be the ones that are going to survive. I mean, one of the things that we do with FemAging is we partner with Keiretsu Forum, and they're one of the largest angel networks in the world to host pitch competitions so that we could help elevate a lot of this innovation in front of investors so they can see that there's a lot around the world that is happening and it needs to be financed, I mean, I just read about some company that got an AI company doing generative AI now that got $1 billion investment. Are you serious right now? Like, there are women suffering with their health, and some of these companies can barely get 50,000 or 100,000.
They get told that it's a niche market. It's like, how can 52% of a population be a niche market? But
right?
Again, a whole other thread there.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
You've really, hit that nail on the head. Two things that come up for me from your comments. One is the very important service that a lot of these companies are doing, because we haven't had research in women's health, because it is expensive. We haven't had a lot of data. And now you've got these companies able to really generate their own data from, their own clients. They obviously ask for that permission. But I think of a company, Evie, who has been focused on the microbiome of the vagina. And they have evolved with the information that they've been able, to get from a situation that really didn't have a lot of data in the first place.
Yes.
And there's so many of those. The second item that you brought up was the differences between different ethnic groups.
Yes.
And so I saw in your report that you focused a little bit on that. So what are some of the other differences that we need to take a look at?
It's interesting. So the report is, about all women. And then what we did is we over-indexed on women of color, Black women, Latino women, and Asian women. And we found, different tech solutions that they're looking for. Black women are looking for things that help to relieve stress for them in their lives, right? Just being a Black woman, not on top of like having all of these other health issues that you may have, but when you layer stress on top of that, and as a physician, it exasperates that health issue. So we found that that's what they are looking for. Latino women are really interested around sexual and vaginal health. And so solutions around that are really important. Femtech solutions around that is really important. And then for Asian women, what we have found is that hair loss. So that community is experiencing thinning hair that we don't even talk about in their community. And so solutions around thinning hair are really cropping up. So once you start actually doing research on women and women at particular ages and in particular communities, you start to discover what the needs are, what their wants are, and then you innovate around those as opposed to innovating something over here in a silo. We in March we're launching something called FemAnalytics and FemMaya. And they're both AI generative platforms that provides additional insights and education, as well as connecting people to people in the space, whether it's investors, whether it's innovators, whether it's clinicians. We're creating this platform so that people who are interested in women's health, to give you, broad women's health information, but because we have such specific aging women's health, we really can drill down into some real narrow areas. I am working with Delta Dental right now around oral health and menopause.
Yes.
And we never really talk about that. At WisePause, I've always had like a table topic conversation around oral health and menopause, because of how the microbiome changes in the mouth as we age. And if you don't begin to address it actually early before you get there, right, you could start having an incredible amount of bone loss where you're not even able to put an implant when you need one in. So,
And the implications for heart disease as well. We know that the inflammation.
The inflammation, exactly.
When I first met you just a few months ago, you were on a panel and you talked about, and it really, stuck with me, that when you first looked around to find out what's the information on women of this age, you couldn't find it. And so then you partnered with AARP. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. AARP, I love AARP. I've worked with them for probably 2 decades now. Obviously, AARP focuses on, the older person. And so when I started getting into this work, I came to them. And what was interesting, they probably wouldn't want me to talk about this, but what was interesting is I went to them saying, hey, I know you guys are the experts on, and you have all this menopause data. Here's some of the menopause data I'm trying to get. Can you, provide me with some research you have and articles and da-da-da. And 3 weeks go by. And so I contact my friend and said, like, hey, I asked you for this information. Can I get it? She's like, Denise, I'm embarrassed to say we don't have it. We don't focus on that. And I was like, you're AARP. You target the 50-year-old. And so that opened up in their universe, it opened up the fact that they weren't focusing on it. And so we've had this great partnership where we work with the WisePause wellness events, as well as this research data.
Was there any other findings that you thought were interesting in that respect?
One thing, and we don't really think about this in the context of, health, but caregiving.
Yes.
Caregiving always falls on the woman. And so when you think of that 40 to 60-year-old woman, not only is she caretaking for her family, her husband, let's be honest, her children, sure, but also for her parents, her husband's parents, right?
Partner's parents, sure.
Right? Or grandparents if they're still alive. And so caretaking became really for Asian communities a real standout issue, right? 40% of Asian women over the age of 40 are already caretaking for a family member outside of their immediate family.
Was that higher than for other groups of women?
Yes, it is.
Really?
One, because there is an expectation in the Asian community for them to caretake inside their home.
Sure.
Other communities, it is too, the Latino community, the Black community, but you'll also find those communities do look at other facilities to support that. And in an Asian community, that's sort of a no-no.
Talk a little bit about your botanical teas and how you came to be that kind of entrepreneur.
Sure. Again, it started with the hot flash, and it was so funny. When I had that first hot flash, I thought I was having a heart attack. And I thought, the first thing I thought, how your mom always says, your skirt might fly up and someone will see,
exactly,
right? And so my first thought was, I thought, oh my God, do I have on the right underwear? Because when they come in here and get me, I've got to have the right underwear on, right? And so once I had the fourth hot flash, I finally realized I was actually having hot flashes. And I thought, you got to be kidding. I called my doctor up. And he said, wow, Dee, I thought you eat pretty well and you exercise like all the time. He's like, I really just didn't think that was going to be your experience. But he reminded me of this tea that had these hormonal properties that he had discovered some years prior and had given it to me maybe a year prior to this happening and said, hey, why don't you take that and let me know how it works out. I realized that I was having severe hot flashes, meaning I was having a hot flash every hour and through the night. Yes, very, very disruptive. So it was easy for me then to, once I had did that, to then take this tea and to see whether or not it was effective. And within 5 days, like they had reduced down to half. And by like the 10th, 12th day, that I was having maybe one hot flash a day. And I called him up and said, "What is this?" And he talked to me about GABA and that, I mean, we had to go and study this for like a year. But we studied, how to get GABA to a particular potency in the tea, but other properties of this particular tea that also elevated to help balance sort of our control center in our brain and our reproductive system so that the hormones would balance themselves out. Now, of course, you have to drink the tea every day, but it in fact has worked for about 75 to 80% of the women who actually drink our tea. And so then I discovered with drinking the tea that it really helped with my mental clarity, right? It really helped me to stay focused. And because I do so much, I'm super always multitasking. And I stopped drinking the tea for hot flashes because I didn't have them anymore. But I still was having this sort of like mental like lack of clarity. And so I drink my tea almost every day. Wow. We came out with one called brain fog tea, just for that mental clarity that I need in making decisions fast, reading information quicker, and being able to absorb it.
Sure. Just to go back, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So GABA is a neurotransmitter.
Yes.
That is related to reducing pain.
Yes, and calming the nervous system and a couple other properties that we have found that it has. Yes.
So how did you study what was in the teas? And so you say you have different formulations?
Yeah, so my business partner is a doctor and a scientist, and so we went to where this tea is from is in Taiwan, and so we went and met with all of the tea experts who are specific tea experts in GABA tea, and then we met the renowned woman, which happened to be a woman, who is the super uber expert in GABA tea and is a former professor at UC Davis and at the University of Taiwan. So we really studied this a lot. We also put a particular mineral in our soil to make sure that we have consistency of our harvest each time that we harvest the tea.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And it's all organic. We only work with organic farmers. We test every one of the harvests.
Do most people that seek these teas out, are they doing that instead of, for example, estrogen therapy, or are they doing it as an adjunct?
I think it's a first step. I say that our tea is sort of a first step. If you're getting your first hot flash or, whatever, and you're not ready yet to go pharma, this could be a first step for you, right? To see, does this work? Does this help you to get under control? And then if not, if you're still having severe hot flashes, then, the next step is definitely going to your doctor and seeing what other, solutions might be available for you, giving, whatever your health condition is.
I just want to shift because you are a filmmaker and you've made some very consequential films. And so talk a little bit about, certainly about the one about birthing justice.
So, with birthing justice, our overarching tagline we would always say is that every woman deserves a beautiful birth story, right? Birth, having a baby is a wonderful, joyful experience. Why isn't every single woman enjoying that? And in our country, just from a maternal mortality standpoint, I mean, America ranks 23rd. We're number one. And when it gets to maternity outcomes, we're 23, which means we are in developing country stats. And people don't really realize this. And I'm not talking about Black women, 23. I'm talking about all women, right? We just have not had a focus on maternal care. Birthing Justice is definitely, the film shines light on a really complex issue, right? There's no one answer to this issue because it encompasses racism, it encompasses how the medical system is actually designed, it encompasses the lack of financial resources that keep hospitals and OBGYNs working and midwives if they are part of that construct. And the really simple interaction between human beings with each other. So in this sense, the doctor and the patient, right? I always say that we have to get away from that relationship being transactional to being more interpersonal, right? So when it's interpersonal, you're actually listening to the patient. And one of the things that we have discovered in Black women's mortality is that doctors don't listen to them. So if they call and say, I'm having a little bleeding, the doctor will say, oh, let's see how that is in another week. Well, if you're a pregnant woman, any bleeding is urgent.
Of course.
That is, come into my office immediately, or I need you to get to the ER. That's not, let's wait and see. How critical it is during the whole, 9 months of the birth journey. Every single moment is a moment that could be at risk. So, some people see the easy answers as, women having more doulas or there being more midwives to help solve this, sort of deeply ingrained crisis. But we wanted to show that it is some of those things and then it's more. So we hope that what we did is really address that. We have found that now this film is a CME. We work with the Federation of State Medical Boards, and we launched it on November 1st, and about 438 physicians were able to get a 90-minute AMA credit. And that's still available for anyone that go to the Federation's website. Terrific. So what was really interesting about this film, and we also did a Birthing Justice Impact Report, was that 48% of the people who saw this film were in healthcare, and that the healthcare community really embraced this film and has used it on ground rounds. They've used it inside their own organizations, reviewing and their own policies, their procedures. So we were really, really surprised that it was going to be embraced by the healthcare community at such a high level that it has been.
Well, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
That is so powerful. And it really does show, the impact of something like that. What did I not ask you that you wanted to make sure that we covered today?
Did I mention I'm doing a menopause film?
No.
I didn't talk about that. Okay, so I'm doing we're shooting now. Like next week, we are in Dr. Is it Moscone, the brain lady?
Oh, Lisa Moscone, yeah.
Lisa Moscone, we're interviewing her next week. We're going to follow a physician, Dr. Shen out of Johns Hopkins, along with a patient. We've already done a ton of interviews with so many people. So I see menopause as a public health issue, right? I think that if we couch this around as a public health issue, we can start to get more attention from government, more attention from philanthropy, and more attention from corporations. If we get people to understand that if we let women suffer during these years, that what happens on the other side of menopause becomes real dire, right? We know that more women have Alzheimer's. Why is that, right? What happens inside these menopausal years, this drop in estrogen and that connection with the brain? Again, we need more research to really, to really make that direct connection, but we already can see certain things that are happening. But these are the things, that's why I'm going to call this is a public health issue, and we need to look at it like that so we can focus more on everything that needs to change. Doctors, closing the knowledge gap on treatment and management of menopause with physicians, educating our up and coming physicians with the correct type of curriculum, and then educating women, right? Letting women feel free to express what is actually happening with their bodies and not talk about that when they go into the physician's office.
That's great. When will that be ready?
We are hoping that it will air on PBS in October for International Menopause Day.
Fabulous. Well, we'll look forward to that, and we'll again keep our listeners apprised. That's okay. Terrific. My final question, and I know that you're very focused on wellness. What are one or two suggestions that you would recommend to our listeners that they can start today to do to better their health?
I would say just take a pulse of your body. Like, do a whole week where you go, how do I feel from my head to my toes? Like, what am I feeling? And apply it to everything. Like, how is my hearing? What's my vision? How far can I see right now? When I put something in my mouth, really actually taste it, right? So, and go, gosh, that's salty, that chip. But I eat that chip all the time. But really to get more in tune. I think this stage is the point at which we need to get in tune with ourselves. Make a decision to include something like that's for your body better, whether or not you go and get a massage, whether or not you say, I'm going to take a stretch yoga class. So maybe you say, I'm going to drink a bottle of water every day, right? You need to drink more, but I'm just going to drink a bottle of water every day. I'm going to have a piece of fruit, not have that donut, right? And then I think from a doctor perspective is to be prepared when you go to the doctor. Don't just show up. Don't just show up and think a miracle on the other side is going to happen, that they're going to figure all of that. You're a clinician. That's what's happening. Doc, right. Save me, right?
In 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes. When you go, if you're going and you have pain, put a sticky on it, right? Put a little sticky or an X on it and go, it's right here. And be specific. It's a sharp pain or it's a dull pain. All of these really help your clinician really fine tune what is happening, and it can help to have a good outcome for you, as opposed to you walk out of there, the doctor generally guessed something, gave you a prescription, and now it's 6 months later and that didn't get really solved, and that can be something that's now exasperated. So be prepared when you go to the doctor.
Right. Or bring those test results that you talked about earlier.
Yes. At-home tests.
So Denise Pines, I could talk to you for hours.
But I've enjoyed it.
Oh, I did as well. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
As we wrap up this episode of Beyond the Paper Gown, I'd like to extend my thanks to Denise Pines for sharing her journey, insights, and the incredible work she's doing to transform the landscape of women's health as a force for change. We will have links to the resources we mentioned in our discussion in our podcast notes, so do check them out. And I thank you for joining us on Beyond the Paper Gown. I invite you to visit our website at beyondthepapergown.com to sign up for our newsletter and browse our articles and podcasts, as well as our marketplace and make an impact page of nonprofits focused on women's health and more. I also invite you to follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And one more request, please leave a review and rate us on your favorite podcast platform. It does help us get noticed. Until next time, take good care. This episode was produced by Patrick Shambayati and me, and our associate producer is Kyla McMillian.